when Rick came out there and cut Eric a new one, his face was beet red, and he was shouting, "Abuse of power, abuse of power! You can't fire me! I quit!" That was a masterpiece. I got up, I shouted. I felt like I was 10 years old again. That to me was, it was TV wrestling at its finest.
Yeah.
I loved that. And I felt like I was almost part of history because while I wasn't there, I had talked to Rick. Rick had called me. He was driving on this way to Greenville from Charlotte. And he says, "You got to watch it tonight, Mike. I don't know what I'm going to say, but it's going to be good." And I knew then that I had to watch that. And what he said, and he didn't know what he was going to say. He thought about it long and hard. He hated Eric. And, those were heartfelt words.
Oh, yeah.
Those were words that you were watching and you knew they were real.
Yeah.
He said, to me, he said that. He said, "To me, it's real." Yeah, to me, it's real. And it was. And it doesn't get any better than that in a professional wrestling scenario. It just doesn't, with the greatest of all time, right here in Flair country. And the crowd was on fire. They were popping like crazy.
Were you did you go to the Super Brawl match with him and Vader? That was I think it was in Charlotte. Or it wasn't Super Brawl, I'm sorry. It was a Starrcade match. I'm sorry.
Right, it was at Flair for the Gold.
Right, right.
Yes, I wasn't there, but I saw it on pay-per-view. And that was one of the last great tremendous build-ups WCW had. They did, all credit to them, they did that right. They built that up to where it could be the final match of Ric's career, which, he's still not retired. It's 1993.
Right.
But that was a tremendous build-up. The match was okay, but it was, like Rick was the aging underdog and came back to beat the odds. Vader had Harley Race as a manager. All the right conditions were there. That was the classic match. Definitely.
Obviously there have been other moments. They haven't gotten to the height of the Hogan Rock memory I've got and stuff. But that's what's fun about wrestling is every now and then, it doesn't happen often, but there's that moment where you just like, oh, this is so worth it to watch this.
They got it. They get it. They get it.
Oh, somebody asked me that years ago, when, there was a good stretch of time where it's like, Raw was okay this week, I guess. And they're like, then why do you watch it? Like, if it doesn't enthrall you, I'm like, because if I don't, I might miss the moment that does.
You might miss it. And there are moments every once in a while where you say, like the CM Punk interview. That was a great moment.
Oh, my.
You watched it and you were sort of transfixed and you said, they got it. Somebody got it. Somebody got it right. And it's worth it to go through all of the, the Divas matches and popcorn matches and stuff to get to one of those. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, this has been fun. I really, Mike, I can't tell you how much fun it's been because, again, and it's not to blow smoke. It's legitimate. Like, when growing up, when there wasn't WrestleZone.com or all the different websites that are, the new dirt sheets of the day or whatever. There wasn't much literature or whatever to go back towards to get your fix when, it wasn't Monday or it wasn't Thursday, but, that was the glory of your column. It was always something to go back to be able to, I can't wait for Sunday because I get to learn more about what's going on in wrestling. So
that was the old days for sure. That was the days that we didn't know what was happening until maybe a week or two later. And the guy who inducted me in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame a few years back, he said the same thing. He said, I used to go to the library every week just to get your column so I could find out what was happening in the wrestling business.
Yeah,
and that was a different time, but it was still, those were great days. They really were.
Yeah, and that's what makes it a thrill here to be able to do this on the podcast here and everything. So I very much appreciate you coming on to do this. This has been a lot of fun.
Hey, my pleasure, and kudos to you. I really appreciate people like you who respect the business. And young people. You don't find many young people with that knowledge of the business that can go back and talk about some of the things we talked about today. So, yeah, props to you, my friend.
Where on Twitter are you, Mike? Where are you at on there?
Uh, yes, by Mike Mooneyham, and I'm on Facebook and all social media as well. Right now, I have an article up on the Post Courier website. Just in fact, it just moved just a few minutes ago. WWE feeling aftershocks of the Royal Rumble, and it's quite detailed and goes into quite a few things that have happened and may happen in the future in regards to WrestleMania.
And outside your column, of course, there's Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Memories, there's Sex,
Yep.
Lies, and Headlocks, and a plethora of other books you've collaborated on. So those are
Yep.
those are on Amazon, to peruse. Whether it's in book form or Kindle form, there are many ways to be able to get to your stuff. So that's great.
Sure. And I think the Mid-Atlantic Memories is now exclusively at crowbarpress.com. Scott Teal's fantastic wrestling site.
Okay.
So crowbarpress.com. Yeah, you can order it from there. And there, yeah, and if you like Mid-Atlantic wrestling, hopefully you'll like that book.
Oh, absolutely. So I definitely encourage people to go check it out and everything. Again, Mike, thanks so much. I can't look forward to talking again in the future, man.
Same here. My pleasure. See you down the road.
See you down the road.
All right, and that brings our conversation to a close. Me and the great Mike Mooneyham of the Post and Courier. Just, how can you not enjoy talking to somebody who has seen and lived and written about all the things that you have, all the things that we have? I'm not alone there. We've all enjoyed, all the different eras of professional wrestling. Some of us are older fans than others, or some of us have followed the product more than others. It doesn't matter. That's the fun thing, is that it's always about, gaining a new perspective on things and just being able to, openly discuss it with people that, enjoy it as much as you. So on a personal note, I give a lot of credit to Mike Mooneyham, because not only was he an idol of mine of sorts growing up, just because, this was the one definitive, wrestling, column that was out there that you could always rely on, despite, the eras of heavy print journalism for wrestling versus it's virtually non-existent. The thing is, it was only a few years ago that I decided I really wanted to dive headlong into being, I guess I'm going to put this in quotation marks because, you can interpret however you want, some type of wrestling journalist, whether it was in some type of print form, in the writing form, or in the podcasting form. When I go back, though, originally it started as being a writer for me. I wanted to be a professional wrestling writer because it combined two things that I'm very, very passionate about. And, when you start looking out there to see what your options are, they're not many. And fortunately, one of the publications that survived kind of the, disintegration of the boom of professional wrestling journalism, all the magazines that we talked about you could see at the stores, was Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I remember reaching out. I just went to their page. It's not like they're openly asking for writers, and for good reason. It's not it's not the wealth that it once was in terms of as a haven for new writers and everything. It's a pretty tight ship, but nevertheless, I still wanted to try and reach out to write for it and everything. So I remember reaching out, and I emailed, and it would be Stu Sachs, actually, who now, it's funny, I end up seeing him so often now on, wrestling documentaries that are on the WWE network. There he is. And I remember writing I just would like an opportunity. I just wanted an opportunity to, quote unquote, audition, so to speak, to try and write for Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I just figured it just, if you're going to try and take a shot with the best that's out there. And, I was surprised. He wrote me back and said, give me a sample piece. Not really a lot of constraints about it. It was just give me a sample piece. And so, at this time, I believe it was 2011. So it was getting towards the last quarter of the year. So we were on the cusp of 2012, which would be then, as it were, 20 years since Ron Simmons won the World Heavyweight Championship in WCW, and thus becoming the first African American to win that belt, which I remember it. It was such a heavily significant, win for him in so many ways, just socially and culturally, for that event to happen. And so, very quickly, I just kind of pulled all my resources together. I found the match to rewatch it again on YouTube, and I crafted together, this tight 500-word piece. I was really excited about it. I sent it off to him, and then it was like 30 minutes later, I got a reply, and it was like, it simply said, I was looking for something a little more current, and it was so deflating. And so immediately I was like, okay, I can salvage this. I can do it again. So I was like, all right. I wrote him back and I said, I'm going to send you another piece. I'm going to send you another piece, something that's a little bit more current, to prove that, I can run with this. I can do this. And so as we, during my discussion with Mike, we talked about, sometimes a lot of those articles are made up. It's just made up stuff that's based on pictures. So I ended up making up a piece like as if I was interviewing at the time. I think it was Cody Rhodes, because this is when Cody was getting really hot post WrestleMania 27, the one in Atlanta, after he'd had that, very underrated but still highly praised match with Rey Mysterio. This is when he was getting hot now on his own. And I wrote a piece as if, I was interviewing him, talking about, heading towards, I think it was either heading into Money in the Bank or heading into SummerSlam, what the future was, what lie ahead for Cody Rhodes. And again, this tight 500-word piece, I sent it off, but this time I didn't hear anything back. And, it was definitely more than a little deflating, because I was, I had hoped, this, because I couldn't get more current than that, would, fit the bill, be able to get me in the door, but it didn't. And it was a low point just creatively, because I was like, man, I took my shot and I missed. I had a window and I screwed up by trying to, cater towards what I like, which is classic pro wrestling or old school wrestling. And I remember the next recourse I had was I emailed Mike. And Mike was very, very receptive. And I explained to him what was going on. He actually put me in touch with Bill Apter. And that helped me kind of kickstart, my pro wrestling writing career, which, again, we all define success in different ways. I went out there and just started writing my blog. It was Going Broadway is what it was called. Then it segued into now what is Under Duress. So, with the help of Mike Mooneyham, I was able to really get it kickstarted when I thought, all was lost because I'd missed my shot with PWI. But, again, I owe a lot of that to Mike, and I hope to talk to him again in the future about professional wrestling. I hope you all have enjoyed this. This was a big leap forward for Under Duress to be able to, talk to somebody in the business, in the know when it comes to professional wrestling. This particular offshoot of Under Duress Off the Grid, we continue to hope to do that in the future. I'm right now burning through this book called, on the film side, it's about Steven Spielberg's production Duel. This was a TV film that he did in 1971 that really kickstarted his career. I am burning through that book right now, and when I get done, I am hoping to have the author of that book on the show so that we can talk about, where did this come from? Where does this story come from for him that was so... that he became so passionate about that he needed to write a book himself about how Steven Spielberg launched his career with what was seemingly just another TV film. So, but that's that's going to be a show down the road. We've got some other things lined up in the future here that we're going to tackle first. Once again, thank you guys for hitting the download and listening to today's episode. And as I always say, have a good life.